Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Bruns. I am the Associate Editor of Roads and Bridges Media. On behalf of Roads and Bridges and our sponsor, ALLPLAN, I would like to welcome you to today's presentation, BIM to CAD, Integration Delivery of Bridge Projects in 2D and 3D. In this webinar, our speakers will discuss an integrated CAD and BIM approach to project delivery, which allows engineers to work in a 2D CAD environment to deliver both 3D BIM models and high-quality 2D deliverables from the same workflow. Proceeding from a 3D model created and detailed in past webinars, the engineers today will show how to create precisely formatted CAD sheets for delivery in multiple common formats to different clients. Using a 3D model to drive 2D sheets augments the existing plan's production process with the best features of 3D modeling, including intelligent rebar detailing, conflict detection, and quantities geometry reporting. It streamlines QA/QC by deriving all plans, quantities, and reinforcement schedules from the data and geometry contained in the BIM model, ensuring the deliverables are consistent and responsive to change. Our speakers will address how this approach brings advantages to project delivery: advanced modeling and 3D CAD-driven workflow, efficient production of deliverables, saving time on late-stage QA/QC and change management, and creating value by preparing DGN and DWG deliverables. Over the course of this presentation, viewers will better understand how to manage rebar detailing, conflict detection, quantities, and geometry reporting directly from a BIM model in one workflow. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, but first, a little housekeeping. You will notice on your viewer that you have the ability to ask questions. We encourage you to ask questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation based on time availability. Any questions we do not get to, we will answer offline. Our presenters today are Jalpesh Patel and Frank Holtz. Jalpesh Patel is Senior Technical Consultant for ALLPLAN Incorporated. Jalpesh is responsible for advocating BIM and ALLPLAN to the construction community and ensuring customers are successful in their journey to implement BIM into their workflow. Jalpesh has a master's in civil engineering with over 6 years of industry experience. In previous roles, he's worked on a variety of infrastructure projects focused on design and analysis of bridges and their supporting structures. As a structural engineer, he's been involved with multiple design teams which have delivered all range of projects from concept development to construction completions with deep understanding of infrastructure projects and their workflows. Frank Holtz is Senior Technical Consultant for ALLPLAN Incorporated. Frank is responsible for advocating BIM and ALLPLAN to the construction community and ensuring customers are successful in their use of the software. Frank has a master's in civil engineering with over 9 years of industry experience. Primarily focusing on precast, he has worked on a variety of infrastructure projects. As an industry expert, he helped to write and program precast software, as well as train other engineers on usage and best practices. Now I will turn it over to our presenters to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Tim, for the great introduction. So now, as Tim had mentioned, we want to take a look at the integrated workflow between 2D and 3D. To start things off, let's take a look at the comparison between the two workflows that stand out for all users. Right now, if you're working in a 2D environment, you're looking at it from a perspective of making a model in 4 dimensions in a minimum to make sure all the data and the concepts are delivered to the contractor and accurately readable in 4 dimensions. When working in 3D, you have a single model that provides all 3 dimensions, including in a single model. The key thing here is we're maintaining 4 different models for the 2D workflow versus a single model in a 3D workflow, as the 3D model is linked between all the different planes available that are being modeled in the current daily 2D workflows that everyone is mostly using. All right, let's take an in-depth view of an incident that you'll face on any project that you currently work in the industry. To take a more refined comparison example that we face on all our projects, let's implement a design change that everyone faces throughout the whole process. When implementing a design change in 2D, you have to go ahead and make changes in multiple different locations because you have details in multiple different plane views. So let's say you have a detail on X-plane, the Y-plane, and Z-plane. You have to go through all 3 of them and make the change. When working in 3D, we're making that change in a single location as it's a 3D element. And looking at the 3D element, it's more relatable because it's in a 3D environment, what you're used to looking at. Then going back and doing the QA/QC for these changes, for the 2D workflow, you'll have to go back and make sure all the changes are properly implemented in multiple detail locations. As for the 3D workflow, you're only checking the one 3D element, making sure that element is correct as it's the common data environment where that's going to represent the same representation on all locations where these details are being cut. And finally, even though you are working in a single 3D model, you could place these views on multiple final sheets similarly to what you do in your current 2D workflow. Now let's take a look at the ALLPLAN workflow. Within the ALLPLAN workflow, there's multiple variations that can be implemented based on your needs. Currently, we're looking at a linear workflow. That way, it's easier to compare to the 2D workflows currently being implemented by multiple users. Within the ALLPLAN workflow, you can integrate with any third-party integration solutions through our ALLPLAN BIM Plus network. ALLPLAN BIM Plus is our web-based cloud platform where all types of projects, either in an IFC mode, a 3D shell mode, or coming in from Revit, Bentley, any other solutions can be imported and placed in a 3D environment. Once in ALLPLAN BIM Plus, you could have that integrated within ALLPLAN Bridge. When going into ALLPLAN Bridge, you could connect your alignment information, for example, that can come in with a LenXML connection that is produced in OpenRoads or Civil 3D. Once the alignment is in within ALLPLAN Bridge, you have access to data in terms of the coordinate system, the geolocation of the project itself to make sure all parties are working in a common geospatial location. Once the alignment is placed within ALLPLAN Bridge, you could start the modeling process. The modeling process for the parametric model is fairly simple. You use simple 2D sections and then extract them along axes, which can be horizontal or vertical, depending on your needs. Over here, the two examples you could see is we're able to take two cross sections and convert that into a 3D pier element. And similarly, we were able to take the main cross section for the superstructure and applied a railway track cross section on top of it and form a railway bridge cross section as seen here. Within ALLPLAN Bridge, you could do parametric modeling for multiple types of bridges. Either they can be beam arch, cantilever, suspension bridges, cable stay bridges, you name it, you can model it. Even the complexity of the piers can be modeled within ALLPLAN Bridge with great accuracy, as seen here. Furthermore, you could take this geometric model and take it into analysis. Within ALLPLAN Bridge, it allows you to convert the geometric model automatically to a structural analysis model with all the nodes and chords needed for a structural design model. Furthermore, you could add static loads, moving loads. And with the upcoming release of ALLPLAN Bridge 2021, you could also add dynamic loading. When performing analysis within ALLPLAN Bridge, it gives you a great GUI where you could see the results interactively. Over here, for example, you could see the moment and shear diagrams, as well as reporting for stress checks within a cross-section. These reports can be also customizable according to your needs. Once you complete your geometric mass modeling in ALLPLAN Bridge, we move on to ALLPLAN Engineering. Within ALLPLAN Engineering, we could do all the refined details needed for a real-life structure to make sure it could be a one-to-one representation of what we're about to construct. Within here, you could apply details from anywhere from anchors, light posts, bearings, PT tendon anchors, and rebar. Furthermore, ALLPLAN Engineering also offers visual scripting and Python parts, also known as apps. Apps are predefined or pre-designed components within ALLPLAN Engineering that are pretty interactive with the input dialog box. The main geometry already is modeled within ALLPLAN Engineering, and all you have to do is change the dimensions or the inputs to make sure the model adapts dynamically. Once we do the modeling within ALLPLAN Bridge and you have majority of the 3D elements model, we can move on and produce sheets. To do this, let's go ahead and take a look at a 3D representation of a bridge and look at the workflow to produce 2D sheets from it. All right, let's take a look at the ALLPLAN engineering interface real quick. Some of you who have already watched previous demos probably know about this, but ALLPLAN itself is a pretty intuitive solution where we can manage multiple roles. So right within the ribbon, you could have options to have multiple roles. Either we could focus on the bridge elements, or we could go into engineering and look at the rebar portion of it and the freeform modeling. We could go to drafting, which is what we'll focus on later on when we do 2D plan production with Frank. And furthermore, let's go take a closer look at the bridge connection where you could see the data. It has a live link with ALLPLAN Bridge. That way, any changes being made in ALLPLAN Bridge can be updated within ALLPLAN Engineering with a single click. And then another topic that we want to make sure we look at is the project file structure. So ALLPLAN itself uses a building structure. So within the building structure, we could organize all our model files. And within here, as you can see, we basically can split it up any way you want. The way we usually recommend it is how you want to set up your sheets or your final deliverables. So within here, we have multiple options where each of these files are independent files, so 3D models, and then we could turn them on. So right here, we have three options. Either we could turn them on as a reference, or we could turn them on as an active file, but not as a reference file that could be interacted and changed upon. Or if it's red, it's the active file. So any work being done or any new work being done is being placed on that file itself. So this is what we do with the building structure. On the right, we also have the derived from. Over here, we recommend placing all our details in separate files. That way we could rearrange them and place them in our layouts as needed. And additionally, the reports can be saved down here as well. The great thing about here is over time, when you have large projects, this can really add up. So keeping track of which one to activate, which one to turn off can get pretty complicated. To help out with that, ALLPLAN always has that save favorite option. So within here, I could go and load a favorite based on how it was defined before. So right now, I only want to see or take a look at the pier itself. I'll open it up, I'll reorganize it the way I need it, and I can get out of it and focus on the actual model that I want to take a look at. So taking a look at this model, let's also take a look at other options within our dialog box on the left. So we have options of properties. This will give you independent properties for the element being selected. Then we have libraries. Within the libraries, this is where I guess a lot of people will be used in terms of libraries in AutoCAD, or you could look at cells in MicroStation. We also use libraries where we could save 3D parts and components. So if you take a look at the project itself, you could save details that we use over and over, which are pretty standard, can be found here. Then we also have wizards. Within wizards, you have options to put anything within this window that you want to reuse or reuse over and over again. Additionally, we also can use it in a creative way where we could place layers important to certain drawing types or certain structures. Within here, we also have sub-tabs to further refine the organization within ALLPLAN. Then we have the object palette. The object palette shows us everything that we need to access or everything we're viewing currently in the window. And this also helps us visualize how the construction process can work. So let's take a closer look at this. Turn everything off and imagine how the construction takes place. Take a look at the piles going in first. Then we have the rebar cage going in, and we want to pour that. So then we can bring in the concrete for the footing. Once the footing is in, we want the column rebar to be installed. And once the column rebar is installed, we could add our concrete for it. And we could keep continuing and following the process and get the whole bridge accordingly. And the great thing about ALLPLAN is it gives you a real-life 3D model that shows a representation that could be relatable to the real-life world. Now let's go back and open up the whole bridge. I'll go ahead and use my load favorites again. And once we have this bridge open, we also want to make sure there are attributes, live attributes being attached to this bridge. To see that, let's take a look at this wing wall and going back to the properties. The key thing here is you can see not only does it provide basic properties of location, layer information as well, but also provides additional attributes that you could assign in terms of the material type, the name of the element itself, which will come handy later on when we look at the reporting and the table process. Now let's take a look at what each of these layers are defined, and this will help us visualize how the layer structure within ALLPLAN works. Each of these elements has a layer applied to it. So when a 2D section cut is being applied, the lines will assure that they end up on the right layer. And when those layers are defined properly, this can help us when we do print sets or export to other solutions to make sure the design or the lines can be understood by users of different platforms. Now let's take a look at our layout editor. Our layout editor is similar to Paperspace and most of the other solutions. Within here, we could show or create our deliverables, where right here we're looking at a typical section, and you could see all the layer information coming in within the layout editor. Furthermore, you could also take a quick look at all the layouts available fairly quick with these previews available on the side. And then additionally, Frank will get into this deeper, where these title blocks are actually pretty intelligent, where you could do mass data import and making sure all the data available within the title block is accurate through our layout editor. And the layout editor is pretty interactive in terms of making sure the data is available uniformly for all users, giving you basic information in terms of what we're used to, who created it, who checks it, how it's created, what date it's created on, which team it's part of, and so on. And you could also group these in a way where we could release them in batches as needed. Now that we took a quick look at what ALLPLAN engineering is, I'll pass it on to Frank to show you a quick example of how to cut a section and go through the 2D deliverable sheet creation process.
Thank you, Jalpesh, for that introduction and introducing this bridge for me. Now we're going to take a bit of a deeper look at part of the structure here. So as Jalpesh had mentioned, this is all one model, single source of truth, and everything is going to be derived from it. And when we're working on the model, we're working on it through many different avenues, whether it's interactively in the 3D, through our plans, our elevations, or any of the sections or views that I'm about to cut here. So I'm actually going to focus in on part of the bridge, just this abutment on one side, and then just one part of the abutment, we're actually going to look at the wing wall here. So this is the structure we'll be playing with today. I'm just going to focus on my plan view here, but you'll see that any changes that I make, when I highlight, when I select things, this is all the same model over here. So this is our model space. In plan is where you start creating the 2D objects from your model that you will end up putting on your layout. The first thing I'm going to do is place a view. Just launching that tool here, you can see that I can get a view from the south, from the west. I can get a plan view from above. I can do soffits where it's below. I can also do isometric views, which highlight what I want to show right now. So I'm going to open back up the properties of the view I just placed. We can see that we can filter by drawing file, which JP had mentioned. It's like another form of layers, a sublayer, if you will, or I guess the layers might be the sublayer, but it's a great way to discretize the data for big teams, big projects. So of course you can filter through that. You can also filter by the layers as well. So here I could filter out my reinforcement perhaps, so I don't have to see that anymore. You can always change the view direction, but now we're going to get into the real meat and potatoes of it, which is the formats. So you can see here, the first thing is eliminating adjacent angles. I have a pretty high angle on here. If I turned it down, it would show us more of that, so you can see the effect it has. We're looking at both visible and hidden edges. If I want to see just the visible edges, I can turn those off. Later on, I'll turn off both visible and hidden. That's going to give us a true section cut. Right now, we're just doing a view, so we'll see some features related to the section cut as well. But you can control these line types, what the finish of the elements look like. and many more things over in the sections, which I'll open up right now. Before I do that, actually, there's a couple more here that are interesting that you can see in the view. Considering light, you can add shadows, you can add textures or fills from colors, so you can get this looking very much how you need it to in a view. The next thing we're going to look at is a section. So this is like a view, but I'm going to create a box of U cube. Anything inside that cube is going to appear inside of my section. And now I choose a viewing direction. You can see I look at it from below, the left. These are the orthogonals, but I can split it. I can go to any exact angle I want. If I click inside this circle, it gives me a plan. And you'll see later on we can do even jagged cuts and more interesting things like that as well. All right, so I'm going to place this section down. We can see it's automatically giving us a section cut identifier. This is a real basic one. You know, you can add your own text here, bubbles, different kinds of arrows as well, or even craft your own. Looking back at this formats, we have a few more options available to us now that we're doing a section. Obviously clipping, if we don't cut the entire object, it's going to clip it for us automatically. We can choose to have our sections show with thick edges whenever we're cutting a 3D object. We can override the hatching, the fills, the patterns, all that stuff. This is going to be the first chance we have to override stuff. So we set a lot of things at the object level, and then we have a chance to change it at the view level. So I can actually apply a hatching or a fill manually to override what is in there already. And we'll see in a little bit how I can actually change drawing types and scales and have those update for me automatically on an object-by-object basis. All right, so now that I have a section here, I'm going to just place down a new section title for it. I'm going to use our regular text. This works like many other text editors and CAD programs. You simply type in the values or the text that you want. You can do bold, italics, underlines, superscripts. You can even add text and bubbles and a few other things you may not be used to in your current CAD platform, but we definitely have all the regular CAD functionality that you expect in there. All right, so I've just placed some text down. Next, I'm going to place one of our first CAD blocks is a smart symbol. And when I place it below, you can see it's just a simple one for scale, telling me what scale I'm looking at, and then giving me a little reference scale. These are dynamic, and that's what it means by smart. So if I go up to a different scale, you can see it's updated that. It's actually saying here it's 3 feet, it's a different length. If I go to a much bigger one, you know, you can see that this is 10 feet, quarter to 1 foot. The way we accomplish this in these smart symbols, if I edit this one, which I can modify right inside of the model here and then save it back to my library if I want, you can see that it has a bunch of its attributes, but it also has a series of foils, 7 of them for this one. And each foil I can decide if I want it to appear in 2D or in 3D. You know, your 3D model might have a lot of extra line work in it. You don't want it to appear in the 2D. So you'll have a crafted 2D section. You'll have your 3D model be exactly the way you want it to look, and they're only going to appear in their respective places. So that 3D object shows up in my 3D perspective model. The 2D shows when I'm doing a plan view. Moreover, you can select at which scales it appears, at what drawing types appear. So we can see here this one only shows up on a scale of 4 to 1. If we go to the next one, we can see it has a scale of 12 to 1, so that'd be my 1 foot scale there, so on and so forth. I'll take this back down to a smaller one. And we're going to flip it back over to the entire model real quick and look at a special type of section cut and some more of these drawing type properties that we can use. So here I have my entire bridge. I have an elevation section I've taken from the side. I'm going to do a section cut inside of a section cut. So I select my section. And now I'm going to want to take a section that goes through my parapet, through my bearing pad, and through my pier. So what I'm going to do here is start my section cut up above, carry it down to my bearing pad. I'm going to get a little witness spot right here. And then I'm going to carry this straight over to the left, go through the center of it, and then carry it down some ways. And then I'm going to come over to my middle of my pier and go all the way through my pier down the middle line there. Again, do a little tracking. And now I'm going to come up to complete my section here. And now I'm going to choose a direction to view from. I'm going to view from the left. And I'll place this down to the right. I could have done 3 separate sections and stitched them together, but this is just one powerful thing in ALLPLAN that lets you save a few steps by cutting a single section with a jog. So now we can see we got all kinds of extra lines here. This is coming from it being a section cut with visible and hidden edges in here. So I'm just going to, like I talked about, make this a true section cut where I turn off visible and hidden. And so now it's going to see only things that are being cut. And one powerful thing is obviously we have hatching. This is great because most drawings are black and white, or we can only guarantee that they're going to be on a black and white or gray scale. This is good for that medium, but we have more things afforded to us in computers. We have colors, and in ALLPLAN we allow you to switch over drawing type and see vibrant colors, so you can quickly ascertain whether you're the designer or the checker. You can see that I've applied the right attributes to each of these objects. I clearly see a bright color indicating that this is, precast concrete of a 4 KSI mixed strength. I have some precast stay in place forms here of another strength, cast in place beams or other precast beams, perhaps cast in place slabs here. But a designer or checker, without getting even too zoomed in on it, can immediately tell exactly what attributes have been applied to each of these different objects. If I flip back over to scale definition, of course, we work with scales there too. So a tighter scale gives me a tighter view here. But not only is it going to zoom in and zoom out, you can also change the exact line work that you have in here. So maybe you want to do, one type of hatching at one zoom or another type at another zoom level. It's all completely customizable in ALLPLAN. All right, going back over to my wing wall here. Talking about that information, that's BIM, building information modeling. The attributes are that information and such a big part of BIM. Of course, we have project attributes. Here, we're going to look at some model attributes. We can see some are calculated for us automatically. Things like area, volume, it can quickly figure those out for us. We can assign our own attributes, names, densities. Users can create their own custom attributes where they can be of any type. Text, integers, dates, formulas, floating point numbers. You can control ranges that the user enters it, so you can create a whole company standard as a special attributes just for you and your clients, and then create reports, schedules, labels based on those things. For this one, I just have a name and a volume, which is calculated automatically, and a assumed 150 pounds per cubic foot density, but I could also make that an attribute as well if I wanted to. So now that that's in here, I'm going to right click on my object. I'm going to say, give me a label for this guy. And we can see I can choose a label style. Here it's pulling in that name attribute, it's pulling in that volume attribute, multiplying a density to give me weight. I can change my angle, I can do some automatic placement we'll look at in a second as well. And it can even automatically detect the angle if I'm hugging these walls over here. So this one does not have a leader, but I can easily go in and put it in after the fact. Maybe it doesn't need it all the time. So I can easily attach that, and that's a live link. So any changes I make, it's going to be reflected. You can see when I highlight it, it's indicating that that change is being reflected there. Now we're going to, actually, I'm going to jump over to another bridge real quick just to show off that automatic placement. This is a skewed girder bridge, also created in ALLPLAN bridge. One of the benefits there is our smart placements. So we can automatically place our bearing pads on this cap below each of our girders at the proper height and location. And with that location that's automatically placed, that Z location that's relative to this whole bridge structure, we can actually use that to create labels and schedules. So here I'm going to filter all my smart symbols. I have a label style that puts EL in the Z location. And now I can go, and it's highlighting it, and I can place it here one by one, but you'll notice that my reference is actually just a bit to the right. And what this creates is a situation where I can click go, and it will automatically place according to that offset each of those different bearing pad elevation labels. Of course, this information will be had inside of a legend as well, so I'll place one down here for that. This is live, active, updated, so as I make any changes here, say this bearing pad needs to move, ALLPLAN bridge goes ahead and moves it, you're going to notice that it's going to update both the label and the schedule at the same time, and if I undo redo, we'll see some example of that changing in real time for us. All right, go back to my wing wall. So now we've placed a label for our object. We can place a schedule for that as well. So I'm just going to do a name, weight, volume one here. Notice I can apply all kinds of filters. So it's just reading whatever's on the current active drawings. I'm going to point this specifically to the 104 drawing. I don't want to see anything else on here. I'll do some layer filtering on another schedule here in a second for reinforcement. So now that we've done some model labels and schedules, we'll do some for the reinforcement as well. Easy again, just right click on your object. It gives you the tools specific to that object. So I'm going to select a label for this reinforcement bar. It's going to go open up our reinforcement bar labeling tool. You can see I set a bunch of options, number of pieces, diameter, spacing. Do I want to see the bending shape, place any custom text? Do I want a leader? Do I want it to be manual, automatic? This, like everything else in ALLPLAN, tons of options to get you exactly the way you need it to look, right? Don't be daunted by that. We actually have, like Jalpesh had said, loading and saving favorites everywhere, every dialog box, every palette, everything. You only have to be smart once. Actually, only one person in your office has to be smart, and then they can share these things at a number of levels. You can keep it privately. You can share it at the project level. You can also send it around to the office. So that's what I mean is one guy goes, gets it figured out, and then he sends it out to everybody else. This is true for the labels as well as the schedules. And the schedules, in fact, that's a service of ALLPLAN Inc. We will help you generate your first schedules, your first title blocks, so that you don't have to spend too much time creating these things. You can just start using them from day one. All right, let me go ahead and place this. So I'll do label. And I'll set this down. And because I have a manual leader, I need to place the leader for me. I'll do another one for this bar here, and I'll do an automatic. And you can see it's showing me a preview for that. Now I'll do some dimension lines. Again, just right click the object, you get the tool specific to it. So I'll place here a reinforcement dimension line. And of course, like everything else, these are all updated. If the placement line changes in length, that's going to update and move. If you go here, use your direct object modification, change the spacing, that's going to absolutely update here as well. And in a second, you'll see where I place a schedule. So let me place one more dimension line label and a place that I'll be editing. And now I'll place a schedule for all of this reinforcement. This is one of our out-of-box schedules, but like I said, you can create your own custom ones. We have architects who generate a lot of schedules, a lot of reports, and they're very particular about the way they need these things to look. We make them very happy, so I'm confident we can make you in engineering happy as well. All right, so I just filtered by the drawing file. Now I'm going to use my layer filter. So I'm just going to filter out my my vertical bars. And you can see this gets much shorter, just showing me these blue bars, which are actually my horizontal bars there. All right. The last way we can put this out, actually not the last way, one of the last ways we're going to talk about in this demo is as a report. So I can have these RDLC files. These are actually Microsoft report technology. It's not just ALLPLAN. It's used by millions of people the world over, not just us. So when you're looking for help on how to generate better reports, you're not typing in ALLPLAN report. You're able to type in Microsoft reports and get a wealth of data. You can see they can be highly stylized. You can have custom notes in here. I can have my own logo to pop here. I can create all kinds of user interaction to edit these things on the fly. You can see it's pulling in that mark, that volume. These can be edited inside of a lightweight report editor that we have here. So you can do things like adjusting alignment. You can change the resolution of significant figures. Some minor edits in here. You can go all out, get Microsoft Visual Studio and construct very pretty reports, high amounts of logic inside of there, all kinds of sorting and filtering and grouping. Like I said, those first ones, we're going to help you out. We're going to do them for you. So they're ready to go from the day you start working in ALLPLAN, and then of course we'll teach you how to edit it yourself. We also have a middle of the road one between this lightweight and the full one, which lets you do quick reports, pretty heavyweight reports, but without all the extra hoopla, just the function specific to what we do with them in ALLPLAN. All right, so once you got a report settled, you can send that out, of course, as a PDF. ALLPLAN can also send it out as a Word, drop it right back inside of the program, or you can even send it out to Excel, which I'll do here. So I'll save over this one and then open it, and we'll see what that looks like. The information comes in with more significant figures. Of course, it knows to set the precision. It knows how to merge, deal with all these cells. We interact with Microsoft very heavily. In fact, if you want to come in here and make any changes to this and save this report, you can actually go back to ALLPLAN and use our import attributes and just select that Excel spreadsheet. And if you put a little identifier in there, it will be able to pass that information. So it's a two-way street kind of thing, actually, with the attributes and the reports. Very powerful stuff. The last thing I'll talk about in reports, JP had covered our building structure and our derived objects, left and right. Of course, everything on the left is your model. And these are all drawing files. I can easily drag these drawing files from one side to the other. It's just an organizational technique. The one big delineation is on the left is what will get exported to IFC. On the right is things that won't. And we intend this to be where you store all of your views and sections and 2D stuff that you'll be creating for drawings. In addition to that, we have down below reports. So you can see I can actually store a report. So when I did my first report for you guys, I selected the report RDLC file, then I had some drawing files open, and then I selected some objects. You don't need to do that every time. You can come in here, set the, let's click. You can set the report template, the file type, the location on disk where it needs to go. You can filter by drawing files, by layers, and then now all you have to do whenever something changes in your project is hit generate report, and it will go open all those things and run them and put them in the proper place. The final formation of that is batch reports. So I can actually create batch reports, and it will run all those reports for me one by one, opening the drawings, filtering by layers in the ways that I need to for each of those different things. All right, so now that we have some items ready for putting on layouts, we're going to organize these by putting it over to that derived objects pane on the left. To do that, I open up my move or copy documents or objects across documents here. And I basically just choose which document I want to send it to. So I'm going to send it to this 1000 wing wall document here, drawing file. And I'm just going to select my wing wall here. Now again, I'll select this reinforcement. Looks like, oh, there we go. Turned off my filter on accident. Now I'm going to run that routine again and carry this over to my 1001 document. And it looks like they're gone. It looks like it's maybe somewhere in space, but remember these drawing files work a lot like layers, so all I have to do is turn them back on and I'll be able to see everything all in the same space. This is good. A lot of our customers like to organize things in model space and then plop them all down together in drawing space, and this will help them retain their relative positions and sizes and everything. All right, so now we're going to go over to the layout editor. As JP said, this is like your paper space. You know, one thing you probably don't have here, you're going to have everything you already have in your CAD programs. One thing you may not already have is the automated title blocks. So if I mentioned the model attributes, we saw how easily it was to go in there, assign those attributes for the project, just as easy. For the layout now, I can actually assign layout attributes, you know, who's the drafter, who's the checker, when it was released, this kind of information. So I can see a nice little preview of all my documents again over here. So you can select, and you can also save and load this as favorites, so you can get a group of documents together. Obviously, I'm grouping them in a hierarchy, but just many ways of accessing all that stuff. And now it's a table fill-out operation. I checked 30 drawings that day. I select 30 drawings, and I just type in my initials, and now it puts my initials on 30 drawings. You know, revisions are all done through here. We have a lot of built-in layout attributes, but we also have user-defined attributes that you can place as well. These do quite a few things. JP mentioned some of the release checking and stuff like that, but they have other features as well we'll get into. All right, so now I'm going to first put down some notes, let's say our general notes. We can, of course, type in a text box like we always do, but one thing we do with ALLPLAN is we support OLE, Object Linking and Embedding, another Microsoft tool that works really well for bringing documents interoperating between stuff you use all the time already. So you can see here you can bring in Excel, PowerPoints, Words, even PDFs, all kinds of documents. You can create a new one, or you can browse for one on disk. So I'm going to have a docx file here. And this link means that any changes to that doc file is immediately going to be reflected, or not immediately affected. You have to right-click update or exit and leave the layout, but it will update every time you go into it to have the most recent changes. And in reality, the way you're probably going to use this is saving it in a template. When you load the template, it gets the most recent version of your general notes, and then you'll probably turn off that link, and then if you need to make any changes, you'll go back and update it when you need to. But obviously, you don't want that link to stay live after you've released, printed, and given this to your client. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is place down some typical details. We can, again, get these from our libraries like so many other objects and just simply place them on the drawing. They're great. Also, being smart symbols, we have the ability to run reports on our layouts. So for each layout, we can see which drawing files we're taking from model space. We can see which details we pulled from our library, run a report, look for anything that's out of date or shouldn't be going out anymore. And if we do need to replace it, we have the ability to replace your smart symbol, smart parts from library. And so I could just go here and then choose one I want to replace it with, and it'll update lickety split. All right, so let's go ahead and place some drawing file elements on here. So I'm going to open up the layout element tool. I'm going to go to my derived objects pane and simply select that wing wall drawing file that I had segregated off. And I'm going to place that down on my screen. You can see it's giving a bounding box here, and then also for my reinforcement schedule. Another way to handle this, like I said, you keep all these together. You know, if you keep them organized, now I can place them down off to the side. Or if I had the relative positions locked in, I could have brought them all in at once. I know a lot of customers like this because they can easily see what they're placing as they're placing it, as opposed to just having that bounding box. So another way of operating there. All right, last little thing with these layout elements here is I'm going to do a call out. So first thing I'm going to do is copy up my section here. And when I double click on it, you can see we have a chance again to override. So we're able to override things when we create the views. Now we're overriding things when we do the layout elements. It's not the last override we have either. So it gives you full control of this, getting things to look exactly the way they want, you know, regardless which trade you're printing it for, which layout it's going to end up on. Here I'm going to take and double the scale, and notice that it's keeping my text the same height. So now if I have a really big detail blown up, I don't have to worry about my text being too big. I can factor up my scale. I have a font factor here, and so I can double the size of that text if I want. All right, so now I'm going to cut this viewport with any polygon I want. I'm going to use here a circle, so I'm going to do a similar one down below to indicate, like I said, this call out here. Oops. And I simply select my second layout and then that first circle, and then it's using that line to create a polygon that it will then cut. And then for the human eyes, you might draw a few lines indicating that this is an expanded section of the one below. And so as you can see, this is a lot of the CAD functionality, a lot of the CAD workflow that you're already used to. It's just bringing a bit of automation to your daily routine tasks that you guys are always doing. All right, so now let's go back to our model and start making some changes and see how that affects everything. So I could do any kind of changes. I have all my drawings open, or right now I could close those and we'd still see the changes take effect in our layouts, but I like to do this just so we can see all this stuff happening at once. So I'm just going to take my wing wall. You can see I've used my stretch, and I'm just going to stretch the wing wall, the reinforcement, everything is all going to go along for the ride. You'll notice down here that my, oh, I forgot to do one thing actually, I'm going to undo. I forgot to do a dimension, so let me place a dimension line real quick. And I'm going to move this text down. And I'll start my dimension tool. These are associative. So when I click on points, you'll notice it's actually selecting the 3D object. So it's going to lock onto that 3D position, even though I'm placing a 2D element here. Notice I can shift click and I can choose, you know, because right down the end of the paper here, I got 3 points available, the end points of each of these lines, this one line and the midpoint of that line. And so I can select that. You notice that it's automatically doing liters, all kinds of stuff for you. If I place a second line and I get it close to another line, it will automatically hold it off by some offset amount that I've specified if I click on it. I can easily come back after the fact and add a dimension point, inside, or even extrapolate out to a new dimension point. All of everything inside of ALLPLAN is parametric and stays parametric, and you can usually edit things on a piece-by-piece basis. So we can see here for even these two different sections, I could have different arrowheads, different text. I can treat them in different ways, what layers, pens, lines, colors they go on, what they need to look like. The text of each of these pieces of text can be controlled, all different offsets. And again, you can save and load favorites, share those with your coworkers. So only one person needs to set up all these different tools, and now you're ready to go for the whole office. All right, so let me go back and make that stretch one more time. Stretched over a couple of feet. You'll notice that this the weight has updated and the volume has updated both in our labels and schedules. Likewise, our the length of this bar has increased. The number of these bars has increased automatically. Sometimes, the position of these texts might not update for you, but the values in the text are going to be correct. This was 11, now it's 13. It's not hanging out there in space. We know all of our points are going to be still attached to the model. We know that all of our values are going to accurately represent what we've modeled, what we have there. And of course, we go back to the layout, and we'll see that change immediately reflected over here in the drawings. All right, so the last thing we're going to look at is printing. So I'll open up the plot array here, and we'll notice that it's all the stuff you've come to expect. You can print to PDF or whatever printer you have. We have a PDF export, which maintains the layer structure in there, so you can actually see the layers inside a PDF, turn those on and off. You can print multiple drawings here, but I'm going to get over to our ALLPLAN Exchange, a very cool plot and publish tool that lets you do all of your drawings at once, and it's very unique ways using those layout attributes we talked about. Here's our final override. This is great. You can override all the line colors, pens, everything that you need to. This lets you work in a company standard and print out to a client standard so that you can easily maintain all these different definitions without having that to work in them. You may not like the colors that that client uses or wants or demands, but you need to print it that way. Well, you can work in your own color set and then print it out to another one if you need to. All right, so I can save all that information as a print profile for printing to PDFs, and then I can come over to Exchange, and now as the project's rocking and rolling, we're printing out our 30s or 60s. We're giving updates to the client or our subs, and passing all of these drawings, and not just drawings, but we support obviously DGNs, DWGs as well. So here we can say, okay, I'm going to print out all these files, and I want to pin them out to a PDF, a DGN, a DWG, and those favorites I just saved, there's lots and lots of favorites, lots and lots of settings. So you only have to set it once. We actually have a lot of pre-configured ones based on common outputs as well. But you can bring all these in here, and now it's going to print with those favorites. And then adding an extra layer of favoritism to it, you can save all this as a favorite, and it will save all that individual data for you. So on the left, again, we're using the hierarchy to organize and select things. We can also save and load favorites for different lists here. And it's going to produce these PDFs, DGNs, DWGs based on some properties we set. So it's actually going to go to the file name. It's going to retrieve project name, layout number, layout name, layout description, and use that to create the file name that it saves on disk. When you export, you have all kinds of options about creating subfolders with timestamps, how you want to organize that data, where it needs to go. More importantly, you can save it to that local file storage, but you can also have it automatically emailed to your customer, client, whoever. It can attach a few salutations, a project number, some other information, and then when you hit export, it's going to one by one create all those individual files, and then it's going to, well, if you check this checkbox, it's going to immediately attach them to an email with the text so that you can just send it. So it saves you the trouble of printing, collating, organizing, attaching, typing. So just another way to automate the mundane from your daily work. The filters, so I talked about those layout attributes used in some interesting ways. So here I can filter by, I want to see things that are released. I want to see things that have been released in the last 2 weeks. I want to see things from this drafter, this checker, whoever it is. I can print in that same way using those filters as well. And even keep a lot of logs of, you know, who printed what, when they printed it, and what things went out to it. And so with that, you'll have all of your documents in the formats you need them, in the right location on disk, reports ready for post-processing, everything's ready for sending or sharing or uploading in the way that it needs to. With that, that's my portion of the presentation. I'm now going to pass it over to Jalpesh. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Now to recap, let's take a look at all the things that we just saw during our live presentation. Looking at the workflow that we just showed, you could see we could create highly detailed tables and reports right within ALLPLAN Engineering. These reports can be really valuable in terms of getting accurate quantities, scheduling for the rebar, and so on. To make sure these reports are highly accurate and quick, we could predefine these reports as templates and be reused over and over again for multiple projects. We also took a look at other components which are crucial to the current 2D environment in terms of the project structure, where we can maintain files in an organized manner, the layer structure, or where you could apply layers to all elements within ALLPLAN to make sure when we have 2D details, they're on the correct layers as we're used to currently. Furthermore, we could also control the text and the dimension styles, one of the few things that we still highly focus on, and make sure we comply to the DOT standards currently needed. And again, when you take a look at the 2D environment and the 3D environment within ALLPLAN, it all links back to the common data environment, where everything is linked through the core model, which is in 3D. Any changes made in the 2D environment or the 2D details are updated in the 3D model, and any changes made in the 3D model are also being updated in your 2D details. This way, you could assure that anything you see on your screen is exactly represented throughout your whole project. This saves time during the QA/QC process and making sure less errors are being formed when doing the design process. Then we took a look at deliverables, the key component. Any project that we complete, we want to make sure we could produce drawing sets that can be handed over to the contractor, which are legible and readable to make sure the structure is designed exactly as needed. So within ALLPLAN, we could create 3D PDFs or 2D PDFs according to all DOT standards as defined. We can also push the model to our BIM Plus cloud platform, where we could do project management, task management, where we could have tasks being managed element by element, and making sure RFIs are reduced. And if the RFIs are there, we have a dashboard where we could control all the RFIs and making sure the progress is being made on a timely manner. Additionally, we could also export from within ALLPLAN Engineering to either IFC, DWG, or DGN, as well as SketchUp and Rhino, depending on your needs. There's no need for a third-party add-on. It can be all done within the ALLPLAN environment. And that concludes our presentation, and let's open this floor up for questions.
Thank you to our presenters for that informative presentation. We will now respond to some questions from the audience. So the first question we have asks, what kind of engineering data can you extract from the ALLPLAN models?
All kinds of information will be taken out of ALLPLAN, put into ALLPLAN. We accept and put out many different data types. In addition to creating our own custom reports for both the reinforcement information as well as the geometric information from ALLPLAN Engineering. ALLPLAN Bridge, as Jalpesh had mentioned, can also handle quite a bit of analysis and pass that information around to other analysis packages as well.
Okay, the next question we have asks, can we import or export files from Bentley and Autodesk products?
Yes, you can. As we had mentioned during the ALLPLAN engineering demonstration, all those DGN or DWG import and export can be done right within the solution. options available right within the file task manager, where you could decide exactly how you want to import these elements and map them accordingly to your needs.
Okay, the next question we have is, if you make a change to the bridge shape or roadway alignment, will the reinforcement change automatically?
The reinforcement itself, it would not change automatically, as we want to make sure the reinforcement is taken a look at accurately. We don't want the model itself to think for ourselves, so we want to make sure we go in there, and if the major geometric change is being made, we want to also assure the rebar follows the concepts and the standards needed for rebar design to be implemented properly. So that is not an automated process. It's something that we need to go in and assure the design standards and criteria are being made.
The next question we have asks, can the model connect to Grasshopper or Dynamo?
ALLPLAN actually has its own visual scripting utility inside of ALLPLAN, just called visual scripting. We know that people have a lot of Grasshopper and Dynamo scripts out there. You can still continue to use those, create the geometry or bake the geometry as it is in Grasshopper, and then bring that into ALLPLAN either as a Rhino file or an IFC file from Revit.
The next question we asks, it asks, does ALLPLAN integrate with structural analysis software?
Yes, it does. As we were talking about the integration with BIM+, ALLPLAN Bridge can export the geometric model out to BIM+, and within the BIM+ environment, you could link up to LARSA RM Bridge. We're currently working with CSI as well, and further links will be available as well.
Okay, well, thank you to Jalpesh and Frank for answering some of those questions. That wraps up our time for this webinar. Any questions we were unable to address will be answered offline. On behalf of Roads and Bridges Media and our sponsor of today's webinar, ALLPLAN, I would like to thank everyone for their participation. This webinar will soon be archived at the same URL you used today, available on demand, as well as at www.roadsbridges.com. Stay well and stay safe, everyone.